Los Angeles International Airport. Morning. A subtle bustle. Glass glinting. Businessmen, tourists, whispers of voices. The camera glides across the terminal and stops on a massive figure, Tony Soprano. He's wearing a simple dark blue shirt, worn jeans, expensive but understated shoes. In his hand, an old leather briefcase. His face is calm. He stands in the first-class boarding line. Behind him, Richard DeLucas. He looks like a man who wants the whole terminal to notice him. Flashy suit, loud cologne, confident gaze. A few years ago, he was part of the New Jersey family, but he made a deal with the feds and disappeared. Until today. Richard spots Tony, smiles wide with a hint of arrogance. Soprano, never thought I'd see you standing in the same line as me. Tony doesn't even turn his head. The world changes. Looks like you've learned to play by the rules now. Tony stays silent. His eyes flicker over the departure screens. Boarding is announced. The line moves. Ironic twist, their seats are side by side. Richard laughs, fake and loud. Don't tell me this is a coincidence. Or are you flying like a good citizen now? Tony places his briefcase, sits in silence. I was thinking, Richard begins, settling into his seat. You must be curious how I'm doing. All good, in case you were worried. New life, new horizons. I heard things aren't so smooth for you lately. Tony slowly turns his head. Listen, Richie, if you want to run your mouth, go to the bar. Richard chuckles. The bar's for people who don't have first class. We're in the special club now. No one's threatening you here, Tony. Relax. We both know, up here, you can't touch me. Tony looks at him. That's what you think. A flight attendant approaches, offering drinks. Champagne, Richard says loudly. Something worthy of my new status. Tony replies, water. Richard laughs. Still playing it humble? Or just not a fan of the taste of victory? Tony, without looking. Victory is when you don't have to prove you won. Richard nods, as if impressed. Deep, but be honest. You're jealous, right? I got out. I'm living. You're always on edge, surrounded by rats, bullets, paranoia. Uh-huh. I just wonder, you could have done the same. Crossed over, but you stayed in the dirt. Why? Tony looks at him. Because I have something you don't. Oh yeah? What's that? Memory. Richard is caught off guard for a second, then smirks. Memory isn't currency. It won't buy you a first-class ticket. Tony. But betrayal only buys you loneliness. Passengers begin to listen. A man in the next row watches with interest. Tony continues. You think you're safe? Think this plane is a sanctuary? Nah, Richie. It's just a long can full of nuts, and you're the one rattling the loudest. Richard snaps. Cool it, Tony. This isn't Newark streets. There's cameras, people, laws. Right, and you still believe laws protect from consequences. Richard is uneasy now. The flight attendant returns with champagne. Richard takes a sip, drowning rising anxiety. You want to know what I fear, Tony? He asks suddenly. Nothing. I've seen it all. I see how you look at me, like I'm dead, but I'm alive. You're the past. Tony leans closer. And the dead? They sometimes walk a long time. Until they fall. Richard chuckles quietly. You always had a way with words. But what are you going to do here? On a plane? With witnesses? You're not God, Tony. Your time's over. Tony, sometimes silence is the loudest gunshot. Minutes pass. The tension lingers in the air. Passengers feel they're witnessing more than a conversation. It's a clash of worlds. Old honor versus new convenience. The flight attendant offers dessert. Tony declines. Richard takes cheesecake and says loudly, That's life. Like dessert. Wait too long, it melts. Or goes bad, Tony replies. A middle-aged woman nearby notices Richard clenching a napkin. Her face shows concern. "Are you okay?" she asks. "Of course, ma'am," he smiles. "Just old friends, old talk." Tony glances down briefly. We hear his inner monologue. He thinks it's all behind him, that a new suit washes away old blood, that you can betray and then laugh about it. But the streets don't forget. The family doesn't forget. I don't forget. The plane lands. Richard grabs his bag and almost runs down the jet bridge. Tony walks slowly. No rush. He knows it's already decided. Evening. Beverly Hills Hotel. Richard enters the lobby, jokes with the concierge, takes the elevator, enters his room, turns on music, relaxes, bathrobe, phone, glass of wine. He records a voice message. "All good. Funny thing. Ran into Tony. Yeah, that Tony. Weird, right? He was quiet, almost philosophical. Maybe he's getting old. But still, there's something about him. Like death walked into first class and ordered water." He laughs, turns off the phone. But in the mirror, behind him, Tony appears. Richard spins around, drops his glass. "Jesus, how did you—" "I told you, Richie. I don't forget. Look, if it's money you want, I've got connections. You still don't get it. This isn't about money, it's about order." He pulls out a silenced pistol. Richard steps back. "Please, I just wanted to live. You've already lived longer than you should have." A shot. The body falls. The camera slowly pulls back. Tony walks to the window, looks out at the city lights. Silence. Morning. Headlines. Businessman found dead in hotel room. Police suspect robbery. CCTV shows nothing. Just a brief shadow in the hallway. New Jersey. Tony sits on the porch. Coffee, newspaper. A calm gaze. Slight fatigue on his face. He folds the paper, looks out at the street. Carmela joins him, sits down. "Nightmares again?" she asks. Tony shakes his head. "No, the opposite. It was quiet, peaceful, like someone finally shut up." She takes his hand. He squeezes her fingers tightly. Some flights end with landing, others with a reckoning. He sips his coffee. The camera pulls away. Aerial view of the house. Sunlight dances on rooftops. In the background, the soft rustle of morning wind and the faint sound of a plane overhead. The end.